Brilliant. So Ted, the last time we met, you showed me a very interesting paper that you'd written, which was completely new on me, and really looked at cuneiform explanation of epilepsy. I don't know how many thousands of years ago that was, but it just struck me as incredibly interesting. And when I took the paper back to our office, it was devoured by all and sundry, simply, I suppose, because people just think of diseases in the modern day.
Yes.
And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the history of epilepsy is fascinating, partly, I suppose, because it's been around as long as any other medical condition. I don't know of any other medical problem that has such a long history. When I was practicing, the history of epilepsy was said to have begun with the Greeks in about 500 BC, with Hippocrates' famous treatise on the sacred disease, in which he, for the first time, was saying that epilepsy is not a sacred or supernatural disorder due to the invasion of the body by gods or whatever, but was actually probably a brain disease. That was a new insight into epilepsy, and although nobody took much notice of that for another 1500 years, that was the standard teaching that I absorbed, that we could trace epilepsy all the way back to Greek civilization. But in fact, through my contact with the son of a very distinguished neurologist called Kinya Wilson, who used to work at King's College Hospital, died in 1937, I met by chance his son, who was an expert, a serologist at Cambridge University, and he therefore was able to translate cuneiform scripts, Assyrian, Babylonian, Sumerian scripts, and he told me about his discovery in the British Museum of a Babylonian clay tablet, or which he said was all about epilepsy. He had an interest in the medical aspects of his field because he was the son of a rather distinguished physician, or in this case, neurologist. And so my ears pricked up when I heard about this. He knew of my interest in epilepsy at this stage. So he took me along to the British Museum, and this particular tablet's not on display. It's in a back room, like many other clay tablets from the Middle East. And he set about translating it, and I helped him to understand what it was all about, because it clearly was all about different seizure types. And really it's a Babylonian textbook account of different seizure types, very clearly described. The Babylonians were obviously quite keen observers of medical conditions and human behavior, which they didn't understand, but they recorded what they observed, and then they offered some supernatural explanations, invasion of the body by evil spirits or demons or ghosts, and that really took the history of epilepsy back another 1500 years, because the civilization that we were looking at was the first Babylonian empire, which was about 1750 years BC. So that's how I got interested in. Well, I was already interested in the history of epilepsy, but it was interesting to take it back another 1500 or 1250 years.
I'm fascinated by the fact that they identified different kinds of seizures, as opposed to just bundling it up all in one thing.
Yes, I think it's what I've learned is that the Babylonians were much more observant than the Greeks. The Greeks talked about the falling sickness, and they didn't describe the different seizure types in any detail in the way the Babylonians did, so that the Babylonians clearly describe tonic-clonic seizures. They describe absence, what we call absence seizures. They didn't use our terminology. They described the phenomena which we can call temporal lobe epilepsy. They even, I remember, described a type of seizure in which laughter occurred, gelastic epilepsy. Remarkable to see that documented nearly 4,000 years ago. So yes, they were very good observers of medical conditions and, as I said, human behavior, because from that first study of the epilepsy tablet, and that was back in 1990, we published that. Over the last 25 years, we've translated and published Babylonian descriptions of stroke and of psychiatric disorders, including depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, even psychosis of epilepsy, which is quite a rare condition. It was recognized by the Babylonians.
Well, did they offer any treatment options?
There were for epilepsy. There were no medical treatment options. There were some medical treatment options for stroke. They had an idea that you could become paralyzed by being stung by scorpions and so on, and so they began to think that there might be some physical explanation for a stroke. But generally, for all these neurological and psychiatric disorders, the treatment was of a spiritual nature. There were physicians, but there were also what you might call priest physicians who offered incantations and offerings and amulets and prayers to the gods and so on.
Well, that's I was just thinking. I think there's an American book that describes all psychological disorders. I can't remember what it's called, but it strikes me that the Babylonians got there first in terms of producing, quite a lot of information around.
I'm quite clear that the Babylonians laid the clinical foundations of modern neurology and psychiatry. They were the first to describe many of the conditions that we see today, and that would include epilepsy, but of course it includes common psychiatric disorders as well as stroke.
Fantastic. Well, that's brilliant. Thanks, Ted.
Not at all. Not at all.